Are you sorry? Are you heartfully sorry for all of your sins? It does not matter, for now is the time of your just punishments. Hello and welcome to the Just Punishments Podcast. I am your host, Charlie, the Professor Esser, and with me, as always, is my skinny rich friend...
It's Mozz.
Hey, Mozz. So glad to have you. Sorry we couldn't get you into Capes and Lunatics next week, but just so you know, or last week, and of course this will be airing like a month after that day. But Mozz, just so you know, that is an open invitation. Anytime you can join us in for Capes and Lunatics, please just say, hey guys, can I come on in? We will say absolutely. So we will.
Yeah, and let me apologize for that. I just completely blanked and was out partying with some friends and got a little out of hand, and I didn't make it back in time. I apologize. I'll try to make the next one.
It's okay, man. It happens to the best of us. Okay, so tonight's episode, Season 1, Episode 7, Crosshairs. Written, let's see, we got it created by Steve Lightfoot, written by Bruce Marshall Romans, story editor Angela Lamanna, and of course, hardest working man in show business once again is Ken Christensen, our staff writer. Okay, and our description of this week's episode is: Lewis struggles with the ramifications of his actions. Frank and Micro pursue another face from the past. Madani and Sam go bug hunting. Okay, this is a fun episode. We open up with our little Lady Macbeth scene with Lewis, trying to wash the blood off his hands to no avail. It is an interesting moment just because there is so much blood on his hands, and he is trying to wash it off, and he really does a poor job of it.
Right.
He really clearly has lots of blood all over himself and his hands when he's done.
Right. I mean, I don't think he was done cleaning. He just wanted to get the other things that were outside handled before his father got home. I don't think he expected his father to be there, so I don't think he expected to be presentable, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I guess so. I just find it interesting that, I think on some level there's also just maybe a lack of care to it. He basically...
A lack of wanting to get caught?
Well, maybe maybe it's a wanting to get caught, maybe it is a cry for help, or maybe it's just he is so separated from the wrongness of his actions, if you will, that he's in a spot where he's like, yeah, I did that, and no, it may not be right, but it's what I did, and I'm not going to worry about it at this point. Because as we see, he is going on to the next level. By the end of this episode, he is really he has decided that if he cannot return to the war, he will bring the war home. Now, exactly how that's going to be translated, we're going to have to see. But he does take some very scary actions in this.
Yeah, he's found a side to take, Yeah.
Well, and this goes to his point about, you know who your enemy is anymore, and he does not know who his enemy is anymore, so he is going to figure out who his enemy is. And it's going to be interesting to see who his enemy winds up being. I'm kind of thinking it might wind up being the...
Anvil?
I'm sorry? No, I think it might be his support group.
Oh, interesting.
Because if you think about it, this is where a lot of his betrayals have happened. Both, what was his name? The guy he just murdered who was lying to him, and of course
Connor, I think.
Yeah, and of course the leader of the group who basically queered his deal with Anvil. So, I don't think he has any grudge against Anvil. I think if he's going to have a grudge against anyone, it's going to be the members of this group. But we're going to have to see how that plays out, because, of course, I haven't watched ahead yet, so who knows where it goes from there. Additionally, with this... Now,
it's interesting. I mean, he does put the gun in his mouth for a second and then thinks twice,
Well, yeah, because I think on some level... when that goes to this idea of wanting to get caught, of wanting it to be over. And for what it's worth, in this moment, as he's contemplating, a final idea, a final way out, he is also, kind of leaving himself, for lack of a better word, he's leaving himself sort of stranded there. He doesn't want to. He doesn't want to continue on, but he also doesn't know how to get out. And it's sort of this idea that, and again, to circle back to that story we get at the start of it about the man digging the hole, how maybe the idea that maybe we'll dig a little deeper and that'll get us out. So Lewis has made his choice here, but I don't want to dwell on Lewis. We did a lot of that last week. Suffice it to say, Lewis is seeking to. We see him building a pressure cooker bomb, and we have yet to see what his who his enemy will be, but we're going to see where that goes. Back in the A plot, we have basically Micro and Frank have tracked down. They got what they needed to from the third man, who I don't even know who this guy was supposed to be. Honestly, he is such a created sad sack. It's actually a little annoying to me that he's in the story at all, because he clearly does not have. He is not a valued target in it. He is not anyone that anyone seems to have any loyalty to, or who even seems to have any particularly important access. He seems to be the guy who's just literally a loose end. Where he is a guy who's basically there just to get shot.
Right. I didn't even understand what the plot was of why he was important, or what information he had, or why he, was supposed to die in the raid or whatever. It was just an excuse to have a funny scene and a cool military scene.
Yeah, well,
that's what it felt like.
Well, what I think, so here's what it is he is a guy who's in it because he knows it. So he, for whatever reason, he was in the right place at the right time and knows what's going on with this, with everything that Anvil and Agent Orange and theoretically the Colonel were all up to. So he knew everything. He didn't do anything for it, but he just knew of it. So he had to be on the take to keep his mouth shut.
Right.
But of course, if you're on the take just to keep your mouth shut, that means that your value is only. You only have value so long as it's cheaper to pay you off than to kill you. And he crossed that line this episode. He's basically used his bait to draw out Frank, but Frank is using him as bait as well, because they clone his phone with the idea that he's going to eventually cross paths with Agent Orange, and once they figure out where Agent Orange is, then they can go take him out. And that is what they plan to do, and that is what they try to do. Leading up to this, we get a lot of a very good back and forth between Agent Orange and Billy Rousseau.
So Frank and Micro are planning the attack on Morty Bennett, the quintessential middle-level CIA bureaucrat.
Yeah.
Who's really, really okay with giving up his job all of a sudden.
Yeah. Well, this is the guy who's running the army base? Yeah, because he was a soldier. He was some kind of army guy.
Right, but I thought he was like a higher up, someone who had some real power or some people under him.
Yeah, I think my understanding was that he was just in charge of the army base, that he was just like the base commander. But if it's an important base, that can be useful. If it gets you in the door, then Basically, if you're the gatekeeper for something, or if nothing else, if they're running things through there, or there's lots of ways that it could be opening doors for people. So
yeah, and just the way he was talking to Agent Orange I was like, okay, he must be somebody or think he's somebody. But then he sits down.
I think it's the thinks he's somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah, he thinks he's somebody. Is he somebody? Not so much. And of course, we do get the now was it this episode that we get the whole scene with the hooker and all that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that, and again, that was just like, I mean, I guess it's for laughs, I guess.
Yeah, that's I appreciated it just for that. It wasn't too serious, but it was a silly scene.
Yeah. Well, and of course, and like I say, although they made the point that he's gonna, of course he's gonna tell Frank Castle everything he knows. He's a cow, he's not a guy that we can expect to keep his mouth shut. And of course, what happens is when he says, "I didn't tell Frank Castle anything," essentially they've got two ways to look at it. Is he lying to us and he told Frank Castle everything, or is it that Frank never asked him any information? And because Frank never asked him any information, does that tell them that maybe Frank knows something that they're not being told? You know what I mean? Because I think that's a very real possibility there, that Frank has, if nothing else, maybe tipped his hat in not doing that. But for what it's worth, they do get all the information they need to.
Yeah, I mean, it's a smart decision to make, just err on the side of that. Like, okay, Frank has something.
Yeah. And
what I thought was interesting about that scene, though, is it's the first time you get to see Frank and Russo face off, in a fight. And Frank gets shot in his hand, and he shoots Russo in the chest, but he knows he's wearing a vest,
Mm-hmm.
But it was interesting that they finally got to square off and actually fight. So the game is on now between the two of them.
Although, of course, when you get that, you don't actually know that that's Russo. You don't know.
You don't think?
Well, I didn't know it was Russo. I just thought that was another Special Forces guy. I didn't assume it was Russo. I mean, I guess logically, Russo was a logical idea as who that might have been, but I did not make that as an assumption.
Interesting, because I thought they were when he was talking outside before they were getting ready to go in, they had this whole build up of him leading the team as they were going in. Maybe I was mistaken.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you picked up on it better than I did. That's always a possibility that it was there and I just missed it.
Okay, so yeah, that's what stuck out to me as really interesting.
Mm-hmm. And of course we get basically Frank having to face his worst fear of what can happen on this adventure, which is that some kid gets the drop on him. Or even not gets the drop on him, but, a kid, some soldier just doing his job has him there. And Frank can drop the soldier, in 10 seconds if he has to, but he doesn't want to have to go there. He doesn't want to have to, break this way. And that is... And I thought that was a nice touch, because it does show that, Frank is dealing with this, worried about this, and trying to figure out what he can do next, that basically, and what I always say is that, it shows the basic difficulty of what Frank is trying to do. When he's going after, criminals, it was much easier to play it black and white. When you're going up against the government, it's not so easy. It's not so easy because things aren't clear. Things aren't easy when you're asking,
Well, not just the government, but someone just like him, The only truth he can know is how he feels about things. And in the military, every soldier's the same. So it's like you give that same sort of respect over to the next guy. And since he was in that situation, that's the one thing he can trust. So to turn your back on that soldier would be turning your back on, himself in a way. So that's why I think it's hard for him.
Yeah. No, and that's a very real point there. Now, beyond that, we have, you know, we do have Morty getting his comeuppance in this because he, you know, they basically
There was no retirement plan. There was no gold watch. There was no money.
Yeah, it wasn't what it was going. You know, it was, and the thing is, you know, he should have known that this is how it was ending. And I do wonder if how quickly he realized what was going on. I'd like to think he kind of realized he was being, sent to a farm upstate shortly after he got to the safe house and realized, oh, this is not that safe of a house, is it? But he does well. And of course, obviously, once he sees the hooker, he knows his time is up. And I guess he probably panicked a bit more than a guy who knew what was going on. But yeah, it was. Morty, we hardly knew ye, and we kind of knew this is what was going to happen to you. So, yeah, it was. It's how it ends. It ends in a. I feel bad for that poor hooker, though. I got to say that.
Yeah, I guess so.
I always feel bad for sex workers when they get murdered and things like this, because it's like, dude, the sex worker's not there to cause you any problems. Why are you murdering her?
Right, that's true.
She's a sex worker. Well, it's like, first off, she doesn't really know anything.
Right, she's just there to bring a smile.
Yeah, exactly. So even if someone goes to her and says, "Oh, what happens?" Says, "Well, I was paid to, smack around this guy because he likes that, and that's the extent of my knowledge." It's like, do I know who any of the other people in that room were? No idea. So why you gotta murder her? It's
right.
You know what it is? It is an unnecessary bit of cruelty inserted into the story to make sure you know how evil.
Yeah.
Know how evil Billy Russo and Agent Orange really are. Because if they just killed Morty, it'd say, "Oh, well, he kind of had it coming," and we've already made Morty a laughingstock, so.
Right.
Who cares if he dies? But when you kill the hooker, it's to remind you that, hey, they're killing people they don't necessarily have to.
I know, but she saw people, she knew things, and if you're these kinds of people conducting these kind of clandestine operations, every loose end has to be attended to, I think.
Yeah, I guess so, but
it's just a business.
I think that is a loose end that could have been handled much easier. Because, not for nothing, I mean, it's...
But hey, no, you look at any story. Who's the first one to talk? Hookers.
Yeah, if someone...
Well,
I mean, only because you... Well, you know what? But it's the same thing with Morty, Morty was a bigger loose end than this hooker was.
Right.
And they let Morty, run wild for a good long time. What I'm saying is that Morty didn't get killed off earlier because they worried that it would bring too much heat. The fact that human life is so cheap to them that it's really just a question of the cost, the cost benefit analysis. Are you more expensive to kill or more expensive to leave alive? And it's sad that for that poor hooker, it didn't even. The math wasn't even that hard. So that's my sad feeling on this. Although I do want to get to this final point because, of course, through all of this, we do finally get the Punisher gets what he wanted. He finds out where Agent Orange is, and he goes to confront Agent Orange. And not confront him, but this is one of these things where I have to say the Punisher is bad at his job.
Yeah.
Because, okay, first off, this is a CIA safe house. And they make mention that it's a CIA safe house. And the Punisher doesn't imagine they might have ballistic glass. And then, after he shoots it and cracks the glass, He just sits there like, oh, the glass is bulletproof. But he cracked the glass, so probably the next 2 or 3 shots were going to go through. And he might have been able to get a kill shot in there had he just kept firing, had he not blown his cool.
Right.
So basically my take is that Punisher is bad at his job. That he had a perfect shot, and he totally blew it.
Right. No, absolutely.
Yeah.
He had him dead in his sights. And what's funny is, in that moment, you get, that same feeling that Russo talked to him about earlier, where he's like, that look a man gets where he knows he's about to die. You had that look.
Yeah.
That one time when Frank was beating the hell out of you. And then he gave him that look again.
Yeah.
And that bullet strikes that window.
Yeah, because, Agent Orange is not that much different than Morty. And I think that's what we're supposed to take away in that moment. Is that, Morty is the less intelligent Agent Orange. That he knows things and he's connected, but, at least Agent Orange, can mastermind stuff, which Morty couldn't. But at the end of the day, they're both these cowardly little men hiding behind desks, calling the shots with other people's lives and, deserving of a comeuppance, They work hard to give that to us here, so that we don't feel bad when these people get murdered later on.
Right.
Anyway, do you have any other thoughts on tonight's episode, Mozz?
No, I thought the scene between Micro and Frank in the truck was kind of nice. Mm-hmm. Talking to their families and Micro maybe having to go back, and how his apprehension about that is completely stupid and silly.
Yeah. Well, but you have to love Frank for, telling him like it is. Like, yeah, it will be hard. Yeah, she probably will be upset that you lied to her for these years. But it's going to be work. But that doesn't mean it's not worth it.
Yeah.
And that's the truth of it, is that it is going to be work. But you know what? It would have been work had he not disappeared for 10 years, because any relationship like that is going to be work. Because even if his son is lashing out because he is fatherless, the fact of the matter is his son might be lashing out for a completely different reason if his father had been there, That all these things are the things that could be happening, and that's the thing, is domesticity is difficult. There aren't easy answers to any of this.
Mm-hmm.
That is the takeaway. Okay.
Yeah, indeed.
Mozz, if anyone would like to talk to you about the Punisher or anything else, how can they reach out and touch you?
They can email me at mozzmanzor@gmail.com, or find me on Facebook under Mozzor. That's MOZZMANZOOR.
And, of course, you can always write to me in that old-fashioned email way the way our Mozz and Poz once did, at superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. That's superconnectivityblog, all one word, @gmail.com. And, of course, follow me on the Twitters as I live tweet Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Legends of Tomorrow, and anything else that I happen to be able to live tweet because my TV is working, or not, at any given moment. At Charlie Esser, that's CharlieEssesscr. Look for the 2 E's in the middle for quality. And now you are forgiven for all your sins. Go in peace and sin no more, but we do know you will sin, and when you do, return for your just punishments. Good night.